got through all of that. If you can believe it or not, there's people over there now. If you notice when they was having programs ago, like 20 years ago, it was people still pulling back on that stuff. They wasn't in a hurry to get to no Sunnis. Right? They was like dragging back to the time, the Lamb's time, and stuff like that. And I had the guy that sell t-shirts and his homeboy, they kind of cornered me and over at our little Masjid, and they was, well, you wasn't really really my behind us. I stood up at 63. That's before any of y'all. The t-shirt seller and his homeboy, that was Imam. I said, oh, no. I stood up and I started running the lessons, and they went on. Because they couldn't hang. They couldn't, you know what I mean? They just had the standard stuff. You know what I mean? And I got in with the home folks that was really the crew I was with. On June the 6th, 1966, 666, my homeboys, especially in the penitentiary, had packed up their stuff. And of course, that's when, the mothership's supposed to come. And everything was supposed to happen when those numbers line up. 666. June the 6th, 1966. The brothers, the guards had to tell the brothers to go back to, they was at the gates. They was backed up, ready to go. Their mothership didn't make it, but it wasn't their fault. They was ready. But see, you could spot them because, and you could tell the ones that are impeded. When we talk about transition, transformation and transcendence, there's a lot of people, you could tell when somebody is froze in an era, especially if you was there with them, you could tell. They don't know you could tell. But you could tell right when they get stuck. Remember we visited one of the pioneers over at the old folks' home? Remember he was mumbling about these are the pictures. I said, yep. He was froze when he was the Imam, and when you get old, you start going back and forward. You start going forward to being more childish-like, but you go back to the grand old days, and the older you get, the older you start going back to, like, I'm starting to talk like my father and walk like my father and all of that. And even using the same old country, hey, girl, what you doing? I'm talking to my daughters, And I'm saying, I wasn't saying that a few years ago. That's the way my father talked. And it just coming out. So the old not believers, but we'll call them something other. The pioneers, we get on to our program, but see, beautiful thing about Islam in America, when you appreciate it is when you had the opportunity to go through all of those phases. A lot of people, they might have read about it, they might have heard about it, but when you had the opportunity to go through each one of those stages, and you become a grateful servant. That's all it is. You become very grateful and thankful. Because you also realize the people that as you went through each stage, the numbers got smaller. It's like in business or in education and anything. When you first go into university or the school, everybody is there, but the higher you go up, the number of master's degrees, you get less people moving for master's degrees. When you get going up to a PhD program and you got to write and you got to do research and all that, the number gets less. In business, the people who are in retail and there's a lot of people doing that. But when you rise above and move to a higher level, there's less people there. And the higher you go, the less people you find. That's the same way it is in the deen. A lot of people came in and they accepted Islam at different times, whatever stage the movement was at that time. Many of them went back to what they was doing. Many of them stayed. But as you evolve from stage to stage, the number gets less. You can look over there, you can look everywhere. Remember how revolutionary the brothers was when you first came into Islam? How socially conscious?
Yep.
Remember when we went to a few funerals? Not that they should have had the funerals black on Masjid or anything. But remember all the old men that was gray-headed and wasn't. Why y'all do all of that? What was the purpose of going through that to come to the end of your life and not be interested in any propagation, any invitation, or anything? And Islam had changed from a political, social, and a spiritual paradigm to rituals. And you see everybody at a janazah, just like in Christianity. Yes.
Rituals devoid of spirituality.
Rituals devoid of spirituality. 100% right. Okay. Some of y'all remember October 2002. One more mountain to climb. This is the last, no, it's not the last, but it's the old thing. One more mountain to climb, one more river to cross. And our history, our history is a history of visible struggle. You know, that we never make it to the, let's call it the promised land. If y'all remember way back in history, stood on the banks of Jordan and watched the ship go by. In the old days, crossing over the Jordan, crossing over the river, going beyond the barrier, meant going into the promised land. The promised land. Escaping slavery. And everything was wade in the water, the rivers, the Ohio River, the doggone, all these rivers that you cross from Ohio to Pennsylvania, or you cross right over there, the doggone Potomac, or any of it. It was crossing one barrier. And once you cross that barrier, you was in the promised land. But you notice around 100 years ago, there was a subtle change, unconscious change in the dialogue, in the song, that crossing over to the other side meant dying. It crossed over to the other side. Now, what was that? You ask a preacher, he don't even know. What it meant was, is black people had given up their hope of the promised land in this life. It's not I psychologically, consciously give up. But during that psychological trend, that was a height of Jim Crow. They was hanging black people like it was nothing. at 1910, 15, 17. This is 1918 and 19 was the biggest years of lynching. That picture is right there in Mooresville, right there by way. When I spent the summer of '87 at ISNA headquarters, studying fiqh, I went out and did my run every day. So I go out and run an old 267, you know, that's out there past the airport, that crosses over I-70. So the first day I ran out of ISNA's giant compound, I turned left and the white boys drove by and they turned around. Good thing I'm from the South. They turned around, so I crossed the street automatically. I went across the road. And they just threw a beer can, but if I'd have been a damn fool, I mean, not a damn fool. If I'd have stayed where I was, it might have been an incident. But as I kept running, I looked up and the sign said Mooresville and another, when you go under I-70. Mooresville. The picture of the guy, they done hung him. There's a cross there. They got all the white folks gluey-eyed, and the body is on there. They had cut the man's penis off and stuck it in his mouth. That's Mooresville, Indiana, 1919. What was so significant about 1919? The brothers, one of our homeboys from Arkansas, he went all the way up to the Harlem Hellfighters, you know, the 369th, the most decorated troops in World War I, all of that. He got hung down there in Arkansas. They wanted to show, because black troops thought if we show what we're about, we'll get us some freedom. And they showed, they were specifically that we're gonna let them niggas know, you ain't getting nothing for all that fighting. The Negro was so tough, the Negro didn't even fight in the American uniform. Because they had the Negro digging graves. The French lost a whole generation almost. So they said, can we have them niggas? And they turned them over to the French. And they got the most decorated troops in World War I to spend more time in them trenches and encountered the enemy more than any other troops was the Negro troops. And they showed what they thought they hung them for it. But the French, that's why during the 40s and 30s, Negroes was so accepted. When somebody had it bad here, they would go to France. Baker, what's his name?
Josephine Baker.
Josephine Baker. And what's the name? We'll go over there. James Baldwin, them. Everybody, France loved black people because of their contribution in World War I. But anyway, now to our part of our program. Our program today consists of nonviolent resistance in the 21st century. So we'll eventually get to that subject. I would like to read a little bit from As-Sabiqun, One More Mountain to Climb. This is from October 2002. This is at our last national conference. We had a packed house. We had people from LA, Philadelphia, Oakland, here, Sacramento, some of the other centers that we had at that time. That was our last national conference. And I'd like to read a little opening statement. Nearly every society and every group of people has developed or inherited some vision, of the perfect or near perfect state of being. And this imaginary land, the sky is the bluest, the water is the purest, the air is the freshest, and the birds sing with an angelic harmony. It is a social and political oasis in which the human being has overcome his base nature and developed through strong human will and extraordinary intellect a place where freedom reigns and truth and justice flows down like a heavenly stream. Utopian socialism holds that in this society, property groups will peacefully and voluntarily relinquish their holdings in order to achieve a common ownership of the means of production. This is one of the ideas of utopian socialism. Utopian socialism became big around the 1820s. And their view was that the human being would evolve. This is 20 years or so before Das Kapital, Karl Marx. But those ideas of socialism and what have you was naturally growing in the people. So utopian socialism believes that property groups, people that have property and the means, and it's coming from Europe too, where in Europe it wasn't like here. In America, when you got here, all you had to do was go out west. The homestead laws gave you 160 acres. That means they were property owners. That don't sound like much, but remember the three societies in the old days in Europe. The clergy, the kingship, and the landed gentry.